Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing a guide for Qiyana. So special thanks to Nagarake for sponsoring this. If you'd like to sponsor a guide yourself, just email me at thestrategyprofessor@gmail.com. Let me know what you have in mind. We can set that up. Usually it's just $30 for a guide. If you are a channel member, then it's $25. You can become a channel member by either clicking on that join button on YouTube or through the PayPal link that I'll have in the description. Just $5 a month, cancel anytime, and just do it mostly because you just want to support the channel, just like a Twitch sub. But I do give you $5 off of any guides, and I also give you $5 off of any coaching sessions that you want to do with that as well. And on Sundays, if we get enough sort of donating members that want to play, we'll play a normal game or two on Sundays, just so you can come out and play with me and some other people if you'd like. We stream every night, also starting around 11 p.m. or midnight Eastern Standard Time, and then we usually go till about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Running a little bit late tonight so I can finish this guide, but that's usually when we stream. It's a very chill, friendly community, so come by, check it out. Your voice can actually be heard. Usually we have a pretty good amount of people in there, lately about 500 people, but a lot of people just chill and watch late night, so you can still get your voice heard, unlike some of those 10,000, viewer channels on Twitch where it's just like nonstop spamming emotes. I do actually answer the questions, I read the chat while I'm playing, and I try to have a conversation with people and explain what's going on in the games. Okay, and we do have other guides like this, champion guides, then we have topple guides, best one tricks, how to macro better, how to micro better, does luck exist in league, itemization guides, just tons and tons of content on the channel to help you understand and appreciate the games a little bit better. Okay, and I just want to preface this before we get in here by saying I am not a Qiyana main. I do not play Qiyana. Nagarake is well aware of this. He just wanted to support the channel anyways, and he just wanted to hear my thoughts on Qiyana. So if you are wanting an expert challenger Qiyana guide, this probably will not be the guide for you. I'm not going to have any gameplay in it. I'm just going to go through, talk about some of the basics of her, and just some of the stuff that I was able to glean from playing against Qiyana and also from looking up other Qiyana guides and sort of trying to consolidate some of that information for you here. So I'm going to give you a basic breakdown of the champion, tell you a couple of tips and tricks with her, and then we're pretty much going to call it a day. So once again, hopefully you're not going to be too disappointed. I just want to throw that up there up front, and that this guide's a little unusual because I don't play the champ. She's very complicated. She's not my style of champ. Usually I don't play assassins. But once again, Nagarake, who's sponsoring this, knows that. He just wants my thoughts on it. Usually, and the vast majority of the guides that are on the channel are for supports. I am a diamond for support main as of the making of this video. But usually it's for supports or other champions I have a lot more experience on. So this one will be a bit different. So if this is not your style of guide, please check out the other ones. Check out some of the support ones if you want to hear about stuff I have a bit more experience on. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get in here. Okay, so let's start with why Qiyana. So we'll start with her abilities, kind of what she does, what makes her unique as an assassin, and then we'll go through some of her strengths and weaknesses, recommended runes, recommended items, and I've got some tips for you that I can explain. I'll open up the goal planner. I'll show you a little map, like how some of this different stuff can apply as well, and how to help out your gameplay a little bit. So Qiyana has had a history of being very strong. I think in 2019, most of the year, I believe it was 2019. It was either 2019 or 2018. She was extremely powerful and ended up having to get nerfed numerous times. She was the top tier OP mid laner, and she was even played in the jungle some as well. I think she flexed in pro from mid to jungle, so she has been nerfed multiple times. So be aware of that. If you're watching an older guide, yeah, that was Season 9. So most of Season 9, she was pretty much pick ban. Yeah, she was actually added on 9/13. So yeah, definitely not Season 8. She was added on 9/13. Started off with kind of a lower win rate, and then ended up getting a ton of nerfs after that. Once people started learning how to play her, and that's when she got a lot of nerfs on 9/15, 9/17, and so on. Just nerf after nerf after nerf. And the big stuff was her wave clear ended up getting nerfed. So remember, if you're watching one of those old guides when she's released, the abilities are basically the same, but the playstyle might be a little different just because her wave clear is going to be affected, and her ability to one-shot off of different item power spikes is probably going to be affected as well. So just keep that in mind if you're watching an older guide. Okay. But the main thing about Qiyana, I think, that makes her unique among a lot of other assassins, I'm thinking of Fizz, Talon, Zed, a lot of those types of mid lane assassins that you'll see is that LeBlanc even is that she's actually really good at team fighting potentially if you land a really clutch ult. So that's, and we'll talk about the ult more a little bit here in a second, but that's really, I think, the big thing that separates her is she can sort of get those one-shot team fights, like really good flank engages, and that's pretty rare. Like, most assassins have to position and get supreme vision control, and they have to try to dive the backline and assassinate. Whereas you have a few more options. You can do that with Qiyana, but you also can, sometimes even just pinning the front line if they're not too tanky, just pinning them against a wall to start a fight, can give your team enough initial push to clean up that front line and then just roll through onto the back line and clean up the fight in general. So that's a really big thing that separates her from other people. The other thing is that she does have a lot of mobility. Now, a lot of assassins do have quite a bit of mobility, but she has 2 different mobility moves, really 3. Well, I guess 2 different mobility moves, and then they're on a low cooldown. So that's the other thing about her is most of her abilities are on very low cooldown. So 7 seconds on her Q, and then 7 seconds on her Terra Shape, which allows her to jump. So she has a 7-second jump, basically, and 7 seconds for her main form of damage here. Now, her E is on a bit of a longer cooldown, but you can get it down to 8 seconds as well, and you're going to be buying a lot of CDR with your build. So she is going to have quite a bit of mobility as well. And she's AD, which can or cannot hurt you. It depends on the comp. I think in general, AD assassins in the middle, and this is going to primarily, I should have clarified that, this is primarily going to be a mid Qiyana. I think jungle Qiyana is largely thought of as being an extremely weak pick right now, whereas mid Qiyana still has a pretty decent win rate at like 52%. So people are definitely, playing her a bit more lately. Some of the other mid laners have been nerfed. But just be aware that if you're picking her mid lane, you might potentially create some vulnerabilities in your comp if you have an AD jungler, because most of the top laners right now are still going to be AD. You can see like a Rumble or a Vlad, and Singed is really popular top 2, but it's still mostly going to be AD tops, right? Like your Sets, your Dariuses, Garen at most elo brackets. A lot of top laners, a lot of the really popular top laners are still going to be AD. And then the junglers are kind of a mix, but I think that AD junglers are still fairly popular, although that is shifting back a little bit more towards the tank meta. Nunu's very strong right now, and then you also have Zac is pretty strong. Sejuani got buffed on this patch. This is patch 10.14 when I'm making this. So you are starting to see some more of like the AP tanks coming in. But if you do have an AD jungler and an AD top, you might really make your team vulnerable if you take Qiyana, because they're going to stack armor, and she is really weak to armor. She doesn't have any armor shred in her kit, and she's going to be building a lot of lethality items, which are hard countered by armor. So just be very, very careful if you pick her. If you're first picking her and your team's not hovering, you need to ask, are you guys playing AP or not? You can research your teammates, on Porofessor, op.gg, wherever you want to do your at-a-game research before the game starts, and you should be doing that if your goal is to win, not to flame your teammates, but just to make informed decisions. Okay, everyone on my team plays AD. This guy's a one-trick Rengar jungle. He's not hovering it, but he's the 4th pick. I know he's going to pick Rengar. It's open. The top laner plays Garen all the time. So you can kind of figure that out, even if they're not hovering, even if they're not talking to you. If you just do some of that initial scouting, you can figure out if it's going to be all AD. So just be careful when you're picking her that you're not going to have an all AD comp. Another thing that is a potential weakness of her is that she doesn't have any healing built into her kit, and she doesn't have any shields. Like, she has no defense built into her kit. So it's going to be very difficult if you're up against like some hard harass champs early on, particularly ranged hard harass champs. So things like Orianna are probably going to be kind of tough, and just other ranged champs that are going to have really high probability, especially non-targeted abilities that can hit you, because you do have the ability with your brush Q to create some invisibility, and that does give you a little bit of laning power against other melee champs and against champs that don't have, or that rely very heavily on targeted abilities. So what I mean is, if the enemy champ has to auto attack you, or they have to like actually click on you to cast something like a Kassadin Q or a LeBlanc Q or something like that, then they're going to have a really hard time targeting you with brush. And so if you throw that brush over the minion wave and you walk up to go for that last hit, they're going to have to back up probably, or they're going to risk, potentially taking some additional damage from you. So, that can be a way where you can because this is really cheap. Your mana is very cheap early on with the Q, and whenever you terraform with your W, then it resets the Q cooldown. So basically, you can throw the grass out, create that invisibility for a little bit, for 3.5 seconds, and then you can, walk up. And if you want to, you can Terra Shape again. It resets the cooldown on your Q, grab the Earth element, and then you're ready for some threat, right? Then you can, E in and Q them if you want to trade. So that just creates some threat. They're probably going to have to respect it. And that can let you farm a little bit, basically invisible. It's like a little mini Akali smoke, and can let you farm a little bit in some tough matchups if you need to. But if it's not targeted, so if Zed's like throwing shurikens in that grass, or Oriana, once again, is like throwing her ball in that grass, or, Zoe's throwing her Q in there, just stuff that's not targeted, then they might still be able to harass you. So just be aware of that. And that's why a lot of times people end up taking Biscuits, Time Warp Tonic, Ravenous Hunter, just a few sustained things to help you out. But yeah, you're not going to have any other type of sustain. So your abilities don't have it. You're not speccing into like Death's Dance or, any other type of lifesteal item in your kit. So just be aware that you can get heavy pressured in some matchups. And once again, I'm not an expert on all of those matchups, but just be aware coming in that if you're against something that is very heavy, harass, especially something that doesn't have to target you, they can just harass anyways. I keep going back to Ori because the Q with the ball and the W, both of those are not targeted. That could create a very bad day for you. Okay. So what are the rest of her abilities do, and what are some of the use cases of these? And then we'll move through the rest of this. So her basic attacks and damage abilities, every 25 seconds, deal an extra amount of damage to all enemies hit. So obviously with this, you're going to want to, trigger this anytime it's up. Right, on a 25-second cooldown. Now the cooldown is reset on all targets upon gathering or changing an element. So if you hit somebody, if this is off cooldown, your big combo, and we'll talk about her combos here in a second. Your big combo is going to be hit them with something, then use your terraform, grab another element, and then hit them with something else so you can double proc this. And then that's going to end up giving you 110% of your bonus AD, and then, this bonus damage as well. So this effect cannot occur on the same target more than once every few seconds. Now, I don't know, honestly, this is where, if I actually played her a lot or I was at one trick, I would know this. But it says the cooldown is reset on all targets. This says it cannot occur on the same target more than once every few seconds. So I'm assuming this cooldown is reset, but this cooldown is not reset every few seconds. So it sounds like you cannot, and does it have the details for exactly how long that is? I don't know what is that literally 3 seconds? I don't know. So maybe you can't fast combo and double proc it on the same person. Maybe you'd have to delay it and try to proc it again, but cooldown is reset. Okay, so you can only proc it on the same target of 25 seconds. But I mean, really, you can have this whenever you want, every 7 seconds or so, because you can gather this element every 7 seconds. So it says 25 seconds, but pretty much whenever you want, with a minimum of 7-second cooldown on that. But anyways, you obviously, anytime this is up or available and you have a chance for a good trade, you want to try to trade and get that royal privilege damage in there. And it's all enemies hit, so like your Q, if you hit them with it, it can go through a bunch of different minions and do that extra damage. So just throwing that Q from range, you can trigger it. And so in other words, if it goes through minions, it is going to be able to do all of that damage, all of this royal privilege damage to all the minions and to them. So this can be a really good way to wave clear as well whenever royal privilege is up. So pretty good extra damage. Edge of Ixtal. Now she is really low range too, so she's melee, but she does have some range harass at 650 here if you go for it on a fairly low cooldown. So you're not going to get punished too hard if you just want to try to chuck some Qs at them. And this can also go through minions, but they did nerf this to where it only does 75% damage to targets beyond the first. So if you throw this through a minion and then you hit the enemy champion or you hit other minions, it's going to do a lot less damage. So its base damage is 160 with 90% bonus AD, but then for everyone after that, it's only 45 to start with, and then 67% of your bonus AD. So the 67% is not actually that bad. Oh, it's not reduced by 75. It's reduced to 75. Okay, so it's 25% less damage on all of them hit. And you get the cooldown reset on this. So that's a really important part of her combo, which once again we'll go over a little bit later in the video when we go to the sort of the laning tips and tricks and what your combos are going to be. But it resets Royal Privilege, and it resets the Edge of Ixtal. Sorry if I'm butchering that. Every time that you end up using your W's. That's how you gather an element. Now, whenever you gather an element, so whenever you use your W, basically you jump up to, you can grab something that is 1,100 units away, so that's a pretty good chunk away. It's like a little bit shorter than a Blitzcrank hook away. So you can jump towards a bush that's 1,100 units away, but you're only going to jump 366 towards that, so about 350 towards that. So you're going to have a little hop towards the bush, but you'll still grab that bush element as long as it's within 1,100 range. And whenever you grab that element, it empowers your Q. So she consumes her current element, hurls the blade in the target direction, detonating upon colliding with an enemy or reaching maximum range, applying a bonus effect. Okay. Okay. Against subsequent units beyond the closest. Alright, so once again, same deal. And I think everyone that gets hit gets dealt that damage. Although it says it collides with the first enemy hit. Detonating in a line, okay, upon colliding with the enemy or reaching maximum range. Okay, so it blows up in a line beyond everybody. So it not only, when it hits somebody, it's kind of like a Graves. It just sort of blows out in a line after you hit somebody with the Q. Okay, so the brush, like I said, this appears to be what you would use to trade a lot of times or to try to go up and get CS in some tough matchups early on. It does last for 3.5 seconds, so it makes it difficult for any sort of targeted ability to hit you. So like Vlad Q's, LeBlanc W, Cassidon, or LeBlanc Q, Cassidon Q, all that stuff. Anything that's targeted. You also gain bonus movement speed, so you can get up there, and then if you cast any ability other than Terra Shape, so you can grab an element without them seeing you in the bush. So you use your Q, that's one of your elements. It'll give you the invisibility. You can do damage to them with that, and then you can W while you're invisible and on the trail and walk up, and then if you want to, you can go in with your EQ combo and do some additional damage. And remember, it does reset your Royal Privilege, so you can queue up, hit some minions, do some damage to the minions. If they dodge it, they don't get hit by it, you can still walk up if you want to, terraform, to kind of close the gap a little bit, and then you can Q on top of them, or rather E on top of them. You'll terraform, you'll have the terrain, so you could do something like E on top of them, R to knock them into a wall, and then, Q, do the bonus damage, blow them up, all that stuff. So that kind of creates threat in the lane and should allow you to last hit stuff, particularly cannon minions and things like that are going to be heavily contested. It's just a pretty good old trading tool. Or if you have enough juice in the tank, you can go up, blow somebody up by knocking them into a wall, assassinate someone out of a bush, then you can use this brush element after that in order to get away where people aren't going to be able to run you down as easily. The river, now they nerfed this. It used to be 1 second. But this is what's used for ganks a lot of times. So if you're running down the river, obviously you're going to have access to the river. You run down it, and then you can root somebody when you get your first Q on somebody, and then that will root them for a half a second, and that can really allow you to set up and like reposition a little bit so that you can get the ult into the wall if you need that, and then it slows them by 20% for 1 second. So a decent little root there. And then enemies below 50% of their max health are dealt bonus damage. So the bonus damage ends up making the total 256 with 144% total AD. So that is basically a crit, pretty much. So that's a lot of extra damage if they're below 50% health. So when you're going for kills, you really want to try to be able to grab that earth terrain whenever you can. So when it says terrain like that, I believe that's just like walls and stuff like that in order to get some bonuses there. Okay, so yeah, it just kind of depends on what you want. So basically, it's your river form for ganks, or if you're trying to get jungle assist. Now it is going to potentially clue them in that a jungler's coming in. If you just randomly grab the river element, then that's probably going to let them know that the jungler's coming. So be careful if you're doing that mid lane. But definitely on ganks, you'll want to have that river queued up, ready to get that root. And then, obviously, the root's going to help set up your allies, like the Leona to land her E, the Nautilus to land the hook, and stuff like that. So it's just really good for setting up ganks. Brush is for trading, particularly in the laning phase, or escaping if you have enough juice to kill somebody and still have an extra Q left over. And then the Terraform is kind of your go-to. You're going to kill somebody, or you want to take a really big, heavy trade in the laning phase. Okay, Terra Shape. We've already talked about this several times, but you gain bonus attack speed, bonus attack range, and magic damage when you do have one of your abilities terraformed. So just keep that in mind. It's not going to matter that much in most cases. I believe you max your Q and then your E with the current iteration of nerfs and buffs. Max your Q, then your E, then your W last. So it's a really low amount of bonus damage and attack speed because you're not auto-attacking that much most of the time. Like, yeah, you will some to clean people up with some autos, but you're not going to be sitting there just like beating people down. You know, you're not getting a lot of attack speed or on-hit items. So the bonuses are kind of negligible. They're okay. But it's much more important that you're setting up for your burst combos rather than just trying to always just have something ready so that you can get a little bit of extra damage. Right now, the movement speed is nice when you're moving towards your element, so you do want to grab, when you're like rotating down the river, you do want to grab that river element ASAP so that you can get the bonus movement speed to run down the river, so that is nice, but, you know, it doesn't matter that much. The most important thing out of it is it's on a 7-second cooldown, and it allows you to jump, and it's the same cooldown at all ranks as well, so it's always 7 seconds no matter how many points you put into it, and it actually does get more expensive as well whenever you put more points into it, so yeah, you really just want to save that to last. But this 366 jump does allow you to jump over walls quite a bit. We'll pull up the map here near the end of the video pretty soon. But it does allow you to jump over walls. It's kind of like a Riven third Q is what I heard it was compared to. So you can jump over most walls in the game with this, and that does allow you to rotate kind of Talon-esque to get over some walls. Not as fast as Talon, but it's only on a 7-second cooldown. You can keep doing it, jumping back and forth over walls. So that's a really handy mobility spell. And ideally, when you're setting up your combos, you're going to have one of the elements ready to go. Because remember, your Terra Shape resets your Q cooldown. So you don't want to Terra Shape like to jump to gap close onto somebody. So you're walking up for a gank. You don't want to Terra Shape right there in order to get close and then E somebody. Because then you're not going to have a reset for your Q and you're giving up a ton of your damage. Right? So ideally, you're coming up. You already have an element. So you've been running down the river or whatever. You already have your element ready to go. The river one and your Terra Shape's off cooldown. And that's going to allow you, when you get up there, to gap close with your E. So you E and then buffer the Q while you're gap closing. And then after you land that, then you Terra Shape your W, get a little hop to reposition. Maybe they flash or something. You reposition. You grab the Earth element off of doing that. And then you're able to, get another Q in there. So, and if they're rooted, then you're going to get that second Q. They're not going to be able to dodge it or flash it. So basically, the standard combo is you walk up, and then with your river one ready to go, you EQ. It can't miss, guaranteed to hit. That's another thing, especially at high elo, is it's guaranteed to hit. They cannot dodge it. They may have changed it a little bit. Like, they might be able to flash while it's on the way. They did something to where it was slightly dodgeable at like pro level play with people with like, godly reflexes. So you can cast the ability during the dash. I don't remember exactly what they did, but for most people, it was still going to get there. But either way, if you dash to them and you get that root on them, then you're guaranteed to get that extra earth element. So, the standard combo might be something like you dash to them, you get that root, you W, you grab the extra element, and then you get a free Q on them again before they wake up out of that root. most of the time, and it allows you to set up your ult and stuff like that on the combo. So in other words, the main thing with the W is do not use it before, unless you're using it for a reset. So always use your first Q before you Terra Shape to reset the Q cooldown and get another Q. Also, it resets Royal Privilege. So make sure that you're not wasting that Terraform. I can't express that enough. That is a huge part of your combo. And then Audacity, so you dash a fixed distance toward the target. And what fixed distance means is that you're going to go through the target. If they're right in your face, you're still going 650 range, no matter what. Okay, so this is actually kind of useful. You can use it to jump over walls in certain situations too. So you can like jump over the raptor wall, like using your E, or you can jump over like golems using your E. So you can like just use, like if you position the scuttle, if like you don't have a cooldown on your W, you've already used that and you're running away, you can like auto attack the scuttle, position it near a wall, and then like E over the scuttle over the wall. Like there's some pretty cool fancy things like that. But you can jump through walls, kind of like a Yasuo little dash. It has to target somebody, but it can go over walls. So just be aware of that. You are going to be moving a fixed distance, so just make sure that's not going to like put you under tower or something else. And you can cast other abilities during this, and casting, so you can buffer your abilities while this is going on. And if you cast your Q while your E is midair, then it automatically aims the person at the aims the Q at the dash target. So in other words, you can't miss. So pretty much when you E somebody and you press Q while you're Eing them, then it's automatically going to hit them. You're going to get that damage. And so that's just a really nice quality of life buff with her. So she's very, very consistent. In that. Now this is on a longer cooldown. It does pretty good damage as well, up to 200 with 70% bonus AD, and it, you know, scales with your movement speed, so it's pretty nice. Doesn't have a cast time either, so it's virtually instant, and has a really low mana cost. So her low mana costs are very nice. Like she doesn't need blues, she doesn't need to get different mana items. It's very handy. And then Supreme Display of Talent. So this is the thing that is going to set like really good Qiyana players apart from just like okay Qiyana players a lot of times, aside from, you know, making sure they're using their terrain grab, the W, well. But this basically will push somebody back for 875, so you can hit them and do this damage without knocking them into a wall. But obviously you want to knock them into the wall, so this knocks them back, and then it stops upon hitting terrain. So Wind Blast creates an erupting shockwave around any river or brush it passes through, as well as around the borders of terrain that it reaches, dealing physical damage with the percentage damage capped against monsters and stunning enemies for 1 second, 1 to 0.5 based on proximity. Okay, so the further you are, the longer it stuns them. So it can stun them for up to 1 second. But basically, whenever this thing hits a wall, it's gonna like make a perimeter around the wall, and this can be like really large structures. So if you think of that, you know, surrounding blue buff or whatever, if someone's up here, let me just pull up the map real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so. And I'll show you this with some of the different jumps and things she can do too here in a little bit. But basically, like some of the really common places, like if you throw this, let's say that you're right here. If you throw this at this wall, it'll wrap this entire thing with her ultimate, basically. And it sort of goes around it over time. But this is something, when you really learn how to do this around like very large structures like that, you can get some really long distance picks on people. So for example, if like your jungler is fighting their jungler over here, let's say that there's like an invade going on around blue buff, and it's really close and you're not going to have time to get there. Let's say they're fighting in this brush here. Then you can actually throw your ult right here, and it might still hit the enemy around this wall like that. So that's pretty nutty that you can get them like that. And there's a lot of places like that. You can grab this wall too. So like anything that's like a solid piece of terrain like that, you can blow up stuff around that. So, you know, once again, if there's a fight going on bot lane or something like that, if you're the, you know, the mid laner and they are trying to dive, let's say they're trying to dive you over here, and your support's trying to run over here and their support's like going for a dive here, you could throw this right here against this wall and have it trigger and like knock around this whole thing and get people. So there's a lot of really interesting places. This thing's really big too, and so the walls are kind of the most obvious one, but there are some other terrain things you can go around too. So for example, you can ult the tower and it'll go around the tower if you bump people into that. You can hit things like Trundle Pillars. You can hit things like Anivia Walls, Jarvan ults, anything that creates terrain on the map, Ornn Pillars, anything that creates terrain. If she hits it, then it will trigger that stun, and it will push them back into it. So there are some pretty cute combos you can do out there. You don't have to play Qiyana if they're playing Jarvan or something like that, but that is a really nice combo if you do want to set that up. So obviously you're going to want to be able to push people into walls and get that extra damage. It does 10% of the target's maximum health and just a ton of damage to 170% bonus AD, and then it has this baseline AD as well. So really, really good ultimate. And once again, that's one of the big things that separates her from a lot of other assassins like your Talons, your Zeds, things like that, is that she has some pretty big game and team fights. And obviously this can hit multiple targets as well. So you throw it in the target direction, so you don't have to target a champion. So it can hit multiple people. You can anticipate flash with it, lead with it. You can actually start the animation and flash with it. It's a lot like a Cassiopeia R, where you press R, it has a small animation with it, cast time 0.25 seconds, then you can flash to reposition it. So for example, let me clean this up here real quick. Oops. Yeah, reset. Let's say that, oops. Let me grab this. Okay, let's just say that their jungler is like right here and thinks they're going to get away right here, right? So, you're worried that they might sidestep if you just try to hit the wall right here with it. So what you can do is just start the animation, and then as the animation's going, you flash to here, and then you end up getting that arrow here. I'm sure most people are probably familiar with that concept. You can do that with like Cassiopeia. I think Vayne's Condemn can do that as well. So there are a lot of abilities out there that can do it, but you can do it with Qiyana. Now, you don't have to do that. Remember that if they're just standing close to a wall, they're still going to get hit by it. So if he's hugging the wall right here, you can still hit him with it if you just hit the wall. Right? You don't have to flash to get it right here, because if they're near the wall, it's going to hit him and do the damage. So it's not as necessary a lot of times as some Qiyanas might think it is, but if you don't think you're going to be able to get it, especially if they're standing off the wall a little bit, so if they're like running down the river here and you're like right here and you're just afraid you're not going to quite be able to get the angle, you can flash and try to pin them into it. So that can be useful. Or like another situation might be if someone is, like right here, you can kind of insect on the Lee Sin thing, right? You can W to jump this wall and then like flash over, like start the animation, then flash over here and knock them back into that wall. Stuff like that. But that is something where you can buffer it with your R, start the animation, and then flash to change the direction of where it's going. So pretty cool little interaction there. Adds a lot of extra potential outplay maneuvers. Okay, so that's pretty much her kit. So her overall strengths, I don't want this to be too long. I know it's already going to be close to 45 minutes, but high burst damage, cheap items, great mobility, good team fight potential, and low cooldowns. So that's really the big thing. And the biggest one to me that set her apart are the really good team fight potential, as I said before, and the fact that she has really low cooldowns. You're not sitting around waiting on, different abilities to take, 10 to 15 seconds to come back up before you can trade. You're ready to go. 7 seconds on, your two big cooldowns early on, and then only 12 seconds on your gap closer all in ability. So it's very, very nice. And then she gets a lot of CDR in her kit as well, because she's going to be getting the lethality items. And lethality items, by the way, are one of the best build paths in the game. I talk about this all the time as support. And people ask me, what do I think about some of these other AD champions that would want to go bottom and all this. Lethality is very, very nice because it's so modular. I complain about this with AD carries a lot too. AD carries that have to get Infinity Edge. It sucks because you have to buy the BF sword. It's 1,300 gold. All that kind of stuff, right? And then when you're waiting on something like Lost Chapter, if you're a mage in the mid lane, it's really going to take you till about 1300 before you come online. Then you have this really weird waiting period where you're waiting on like a blasting wand, and then you're saving up an extra 1,000 off of that in order to get, you know, your completed Ludens or whatever it is you're buying. It's a much, much cleaner build path for lethality users, especially if you get Umbral Glaive. So we're going to talk about the items here in just a second. But being able to just build a bunch of longswords and be very modular, right? You can kind of make the call and see how the game's developing. It's like, okay, I've got a Dirk. Okay, I've got a Caulfield's Warhammer. What do I want to do right now, right? Do I want to commit to a Dustblade? Do I want to commit to a Ghostblade? Do I need to get something like Edge of Night because they have too much like point click engage? I'm against like a Malzahar or something. So you can wait, right? A lot of champions have to commit really early. Okay, I'm building this item and it's going to take them, 5 to 7 minutes to build it, and the game state might totally change. So like maybe you thought that you would have enough damage to blow somebody up, and then you notice, oh crap, they're just stacking a bunch of armor. So this Qiyana, for some reason, is rushing Seeker's Arm Guard or whatever, and you're like, you know what? I'm probably not going to be able to kill her at this point. Maybe I've died a couple of times to her. Maybe she just rushed Ninja Tabby, Seeker's Arm Guard, and she's running all armor runes or something. And so maybe you think, you know what? I'm just going to try to rotate around the map. Or maybe the bot lane just blew their flash, right? Like just right now, right when I'm about to buy an item, you saw that their bot lane died. They blew their flash. And maybe you're thinking, oh, I need to get like some mobility. I can really exploit that for the next 5 minutes. So instead of completing Dustblade here, I'm going to actually complete Ghostblade so that I can go sit on bot a lot because it's a Jinx without flash. And I know I can kill her over and over and over again. I can get like 3 kills in the next 5 minutes off of her. Right? So you can make those adjustments and you can make those calls because a lot of the lethality items build out of the same stuff. Just Serrated Dirks and Caulfield Warhammers a lot of times. So really, really nice build path. And then weaknesses, she has very limited escapes. So she does have, her W, but she doesn't have, like, it's not a very long jump. And other stuff is just not going to be that great most of the time. Like, she has her E, but you have to go towards a target enemy. So you can jump to, like, enemy champions or enemy minions. So you have some of that going on. But she can still get caught out and get killed a lot of times. You don't have that many defensive tools. You are also melee without defense. Like I mentioned before, you don't have shields, you don't have healing, and so you're really just relying on that grass in order to get some of your important last hits with the brush mechanic. And you're not building a lot of lifesteal in your kit, so that can be kind of tricky as well. And then she has a fairly complex kit. She's one of the more complex assassins as well, because you do have to make the call. Do I need the brush here? Do I need the river? Do I want the terrain to go for the kill? You have to get the resets correct, right? You have to be disciplined, hold on to your W until you've already used your Q. So use your Q, then your W to make sure you get 2 Qs off. Deciding if you want to be able to flash or not to get that animation going. Deciding if you want to use your Q during the E or if you want to use your Q first and then E so that you hit them with a lot more upfront damage. You don't have to wait on the animation. So there are a lot of decisions with her, and as with any assassin, positioning is really important and just knowing your limits, right? Because if you try to all in and kill somebody and you die and they have 1% health left, well, that's a huge fail, right? Like close does not count in League of Legends, right? You got to get that kill when you're playing an assassin because you have to snowball early. You're going to get outscaled by tanks. You're very vulnerable to CC later on in the game. So if they just stack a bunch of armor, you're going to be in big trouble. So you really need to be able to snowball, pressure and close out the game quickly, just like every assassin for the most part. And, that means you have to be able to roam as well. She usually gets mobility boots and tries to roam to the side lanes with her river Q to try to make plays. So you got to make roaming decisions, macro decisions. You really have to know your all-ins very well. And you have to choose how you're going to sequence your abilities and which one of your Qs is going to be most beneficial in different situations. So I think she's one of the hardest mid lane assassins in the game to play correctly just because she has so many different options and relies on a very heavy macro roaming style. And like all assassins, you have to know the limits, you have to get the kills. So I think that makes her really tricky. Probably not as hard as something, like a Kali or Yasuo, but still going to be up there for sure on the difficulty factor. So that can be something that's really tough when you're trying to learn her. Okay, recommended runes. Pretty much everybody goes Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter. This is not really like that debatable at this point. People have played around with Dark Harvest in the past. I know some people at some points have tried out the Conqueror build. But if we just look statistically, that's what basically everybody plays. And when people play other things, it just doesn't end very well, right? Like Dark Harvest has a 46% win rate versus Electrocute has a 51% win rate. Conqueror does have a decent win rate, although those are very low sample sizes. And the sample size, and this patch hasn't been out for that long, but I assume it's going to be similar data as the patch unfolds. It's just that pretty much everybody goes for that basic rune page. The Electrocute is going to give you the highest upfront burst damage. Dark Harvest just requires way too long in the game to stack up, and you just really don't want to be messing with that in its current balanced state. So you want Electrocute, and you don't want longer fights either. You want to kill them in one rotation as much as possible, because when you do get that double Q, you do throw up a lot of burst damage. And then Sudden Impact is going to give you do have a lot of dashes, a lot of blinks. You have your E and your Q and your W on low cooldown, so that means that you get that lethality, which is very handy. And then this is kind of preferential depending on what you're doing. I would say Eyeball Collection in most games is where you want to be. Ghost Poro just takes too long to stack unless you're a support and you get the warding item. And in most ELO brackets, Zombie Ward is not going to be that great because people just don't ward enough. Now, I will say though, however, if you are taking Umbral Glade first, which is what I recommend, and that's what a lot of pros are doing, then this does get a lot more value. So if you are doing for sure Umbral Glaive in the early game, Zombie Ward is nice. Even though people may not ward a ton, you're still going to find some wards as you're going about. And you may not transform it for a while, but just getting that extra vision, especially as a mid laner who you're not going to be buying a lot of wards. You might even get a sweeper yourself, which is probably a good idea if you're going to be roaming a lot. If you have sweeper plus Umbral, you're going to come across a lot of wards, and that's going to help make up for the fact that you're not going to be buying too many wards yourself outside of your pink ward, or your red ward, I should say these days, control ward. Make sure you always have a control ward on the map as every champion at all times. I'll say that as a D4 support main, it's a big deal. But yeah, this gets a lot of value if you're going Umbral, but if you're not doing that, Eyeball Collection is nice. You might stack Eyeball a little bit faster, especially if you're snowballing, but you don't get any extra benefit. It's just straight up like, stats, versus this gives you vision and the potential for the same amount of damage. Additionally gain, 10, it's the same thing. It's just how do you want to stack it. And then there's a little bit of choice here. I think Ravenous Hunter is really good. That does give you some sustain in the laning phase to help you through, and in team fights that's going to give you a bit more time to stay in the fight. It is nice because you do have fairly low cooldowns. You don't want to stay in really long fights, but you do better in them than some of the other champs out there that are assassins. So Ravenous is okay. Relentless Hunter is going to give you faster roams though, better back timings and things like that. You can do Ultimate Hunter, although I think it's not that great. You already have a very low cooldown, and you just want to get a lot of power in the early game, and this does basically nothing for you in the really early game. So, and he doesn't have a global, or she doesn't have a global or anything like that to help stack it like Soraka does. So, I think either Relentless or Ravenous, depending on how hard the matchup is, probably in the mid lane. If you're going to be getting beat down a lot and you need that sustain, probably Ravenous, which is most of the time. But Relentless, if you think you are going to be able to really take advantage of the roams, then that can be very good. And then the secondaries, there's not a lot of data on that, what people end up getting for the secondaries, but based on what I saw from a lot of the high-end pro Qiyana players here, it looked like most of the time they're going Inspiration, and they end up going Biscuits plus Time Warp Tonic once again, just because you don't have a lot of sustain and there's not going to be a lot in your kit. A lot of them do open up with Corrupting Potion as well, and that's just for the sustain. And Corrupting Potion is very good with Time Warp Tonic, just because you end up getting, I guess it gives you 50% up front, which is nice, and then you get the extra 5% movement speed. So if you have Biscuits, if you're going Corrupting Potion, then Time Warp Tonic makes a lot of sense, and that's what most people do, just so you don't get completely blown out in the early game. It's like basically everybody's going to start Corrupting Potion instead of something like Doran's Blade. I guess this person starts off with a refillable potion, so that's another variation on it. Now, if they do have a lot of CC, you can get something, here like Presence of Mind plus Legend Tenacity, or Triumph plus Legend Tenacity. But the vast majority of players that I saw are going to be going for the Inspiration. And then almost everybody, it's kind of split, but pretty much a lot of the very high-end players are going to be going for the Umbral Glaive. It does say Dustblade is really popular as well, so it's usually either Umbral or Dustblade as far as itemization goes, and that's just going to kind of be a judgment call. I personally think that Umbral is going to be your best choice in a lot of circumstances, just because shutting out that vision is such a big deal, especially on a champion like Qiyana that wants to roam a lot, especially if you want to roam bottom. They're going to have wards a lot of the time. And bottom is the juiciest place to roam because, ADCs are going to have virtually no defense against Qiyana except for Ezreal. You might want to consider banning out Ezreal. I guess you could ban out, if there's a really bad matchup you don't like in the mid lane, you can ban that out, but Ezreal is nerfed on this patch, but almost any other ADC you're going to be able to blow up probably if you roam bottom. So being able to go through and clean out those wards with Umbral Glaive is really huge. It also just really enables your jungler, right? If you can guarantee that there are going to be no wards around mid lane, then it's going to be a lot easier for your jungler to come through and gank. And just having that extra sweeper, I tell you, as a support, if you have a mid laner that goes Umbral and they are really helping you clean stuff out, it's just huge. Because then if they have more, if they can keep that river clear, that sets up your support to be able to go in and get deeper wards in the jungle as well, a lot safer. Then they can use their sweeper on something else. They can sweep the lane to make it easier for the jungler to lane gank if they don't have to use their sweep in the river. So Umbral Glaive just brings so much utility, and it's also only 2,400 gold, so it's way cheaper. That allows you to power spike a lot faster than most other champs. So while they're sitting there building up their Ludens or whatever they're doing, you're buying Umbral at 2,400 and you're getting immediate power. And that also allows you to personally to get the jump on people out of bushes a lot more. So when you start roaming up and down that river and you don't have vision, or the enemy doesn't have vision, they're going to get really scared. It's going to create a lot of pressure, so the bot lane's going to have to back off and respect it. So even if you don't get a kill, if they don't have vision, then they're going to be losing CS. And what also could happen is your mid laner might try to follow, right? So if they don't have vision, they might say, oh crap, Qiyana's running middle, let me go follow. And if we pull up our graph here, that sets you up for opportunity. So for example, let's say that you push them in here and they don't have any vision. Let's say that you end up putting one of your wards over here. You may not even need a ward if you want to get that extra sweeper. You could put a control ward over here or something like that. But either way, you push them into the tower, and if you have a ward right here, you can just walk over here and wait. And then when they try to rotate down to follow, maybe maybe they go this way. But if they're scared of you, they might think they can get away with, going around this way to go help middle, and you're right here to jump on them out of the bush. So you're creating that extra pressure because they don't have vision. If they try to rotate, you kill them. If they don't rotate, maybe you go down and kill bottom. If they don't back up, if they do back up, then they're losing CS. That can also create opportunities for you to potentially, kill their jungler. So it's just a lot of opportunities there. If your jungler's coming in, you see them, you have good vision, you can hop over this wall, kill their jungler while they're at their blue. So it just creates a lot of extra potential for roaming, and that's something that Qiyana is very, very good at. So I think that Umbral is awesome. And that, incidentally, is the highest win rate build as well. So you might be thinking, oh, well, that's just pros make use of Umbral. Vision doesn't matter in lower elo brackets. Had someone debating that last night with me on stream, saying, well, does Vision really matter that much in solo queue? It's answer, yes, it does. Because if we look here, first item, what's the highest win rate? Umbral. By a big margin, right? People who end up getting, and this is about the same pick rate, too. It's not like it's only people who are, high elo that are getting Umbral, just a couple of people, or people who are snowballing and are ahead. This is a lot of people, right? And it has almost a 5% higher win rate. It's 4.5% higher win rate, from 49.8% all the way up to 54.5%. So that means that people who complete this item first end up winning 54% of the time. So that's better than any other starting item, right? That has a reasonable sample size. Yes, people that are trolling around getting Ravenous first item just because they got a pentakill level 1 in the jungle, sure. So there are a couple of goofy ones, but these have no sample size representation. It's of the major items you're getting, which is basically Dustblade, Umbral, or Ghostblade. Which one's the best? That's going to be the best. Now, as far as Tiamat goes, I don't know the exact matchups where you would want Tiamat. It is really good for wave clear, and it does add an extra bit of burst damage to your combo. It's very inefficient, though. Like, you don't end up building this into anything else. Like, you're not going to complete Ravenous in most games unless it's, like, super late in the game. So it's mostly just to help you out with wave clear, which does allow you to roam better, which is good, but it is going to delay your weapon purchases. So it's going to delay your lethality, delay your Umbral, means you're not applying enough pressure with the vision early, delay the Dustblade, you're not getting the burst early. So if you look at early items, so stuff that's built by 10 minutes, you know, what's going to be the highest win rate item? Well, Moby Boots is going to be the highest, so you always want to rush Mobies if you can. But then Tiamat, as compared to either Serrated Dirk, which is going to be 52%, or Caulfield's Warhammer, which is 53%. So both of those are components of all of the lethality items, or most of them, the Umbral, Dustblade, and Ghostblade. All of those are better. Now, obviously, if you have a completed Umbral or a completed Dustblade, that's the best, because that means you're really fed and you're ahead of the curve. So obviously, those are going to have like ridiculously high win rates of 60% plus. Now, Dustblade looks like it's the best one if you're just like mega rich. But that's also, remember, it's 2,900 gold. So if you're buying a Dustblade at 10 minutes, that's a different kind of game than if you're buying Umbral Glaive at 10 minutes, right? Because that means you have 600 more gold. You probably have 2 more kills if you get that. So, you know, anyway, so those are just kind of like your snowballing out of control. But the better comparison, I think, is Tiamat to either Caulfield or Serrated, because they're similar in price. Tiamat's actually a little bit more expensive, but Caulfield and Dirk are both going to build in either Umbral or Dustblade. So that leads me to believe that you're probably going to win more games if you just straight rush your lethality items instead of getting Tiamat. Tiamat feels good. It's cool. It gives you wave clear. There are some pros that are going to end up getting Tiamat, but if you look, there's actually not that many, once again, top-end players that are getting the Tiamat. Like, this guy has it, All Might has it in this matchup, and once again, it might be matchup dependent. I'm not an expert on Qiyana, but just looking here, just looking over the numbers, it's not there that much, right? So maybe you need it in losing matchups, or if you have, maybe it's if you have really high potential for kills, you can get it, but a lot of people who are getting it, I'm seeing a lot of red. There are some blue, but there's a lot of red on people who have Tiamat, so they might just be getting it in losing matchups, and they just lose anyways. But as you can see, the vast majority of the games, people are not getting the Tiamat. It's only 15% of games people are getting the Tiamat, according to this data here. So just keep that in mind. As far as Tiamat goes, situational. I'm not an expert on the situation where you should get it, but if you're not sure, just get Umbral or Dustblade. I think Umbral is going to be better. Then Edge of Night can be really good too, especially against those point-click lockdown champions. So things like Malzahar, Fiddlesticks, I guess, for his fear. Of course, he can knock it off you with his E. But just any like hook champions out there, if you're afraid of getting blitz hooked, like Nautilus Ultimates, it's very, very pesky. I'll tell you that firsthand, playing a lot of Enchanters and, you know, CC champs, it is really annoying to have to deal with anything that has Edge of Night, but especially an Assassin, because you just can't kill them before they kill your ADC. So Edge of Night is definitely something to consider, and that's something that you see on a decent chunk of top-end champions too. So people don't typically rush it first item, but like a second or a third item, it can be pretty good. It's almost always going to be your third item after you get Umbral and Dustblade. That'll be your pick. People almost never get GA, which you'll notice as well. It's pretty much always going to be Umbral, Ghostblade, Dustblade. It just depends on the order and what you need there. And so once again, I think that Umbral's best overall for pressure and for power curve, just because it's 2,400 gold. Yes, you're giving up 5 attack damage and some lethality, but I think the sweeping is more than worth it. Then you kind of have to make the call. Do you want to go for Ghostblade or Dustblade? Ghostblade is going to give you that movement speed, so if you think you're going to have a hard time killing your laner, but you really just want to get out to those side lanes and get some picks, maybe those flashes are down when you have to make the call, are you getting Dustblade or Ghostblade? Remember, you can get, as I said earlier, you can get Serrated Dirk and Caulfield and then just make the decision, you know, 5 to 7 minutes down the line, whether you want to end up getting Dustblade or Ghostblade. So it's really up to you what you want. So Ghostblade's going to allow you to roam around the map, get picks better, and then Dustblade is going to be, you know, if you can either assassinate people out of the bushes really well, or if you just can kill your own laner over and over again, Duskblade might be the call there. So it looks like a lot of people are kind of favoring. It's tough to say. I mean, percentage-wise, most people are going to get Duskblade. So it's up to you. But it's a judgment call. So if you don't know, Duskblade. And then Tiamat, once again, has the low win rate, but, you know, maybe in certain matchups you want to wave clear. But I think it's probably incorrect most of the time to get it, at least according to a lot of the Challenger and Pro level people playing it. Okay, so we're almost out of time here, but I'll just go through just a couple of the quick tips here, which a lot of people are probably aware of this stuff, but this is just a couple ones that I found that were pretty straightforward. You can wall hop like Riven over different walls. So most people probably know this who play Qiyana, but you know, you can jump over this wall, this wall, this wall, pretty much almost any wall, obviously, like the Dragon Pit wall and stuff like that. So it does create some interesting patterns. So for example, if you are... let's say that you're on red side here and you get them pushed in. You've got good vision control here, either through a pink ward or you have your early umbral. What you can do to get around these wards bottom, if they're pushed up or they're like in the middle here, you can come down here, and if they because you know, like, this area is probably going to be warded, right? So like the most common areas that people will ward is they'll ward here in the early game, or they'll ward like here, something around there is going to be warded. So if you want to try to make sure you have a successful gank, you can just rotate down here, jump this wall right here to stay out of that vision, and then just come through this way. Now sometimes the blast plant's there too, and you can use the blast plant, but Qiyana doesn't rely on that blast plant. So you can just sneak down here, jump this wall, come over here, and then get this flank, and a lot of people are not going to be suspecting that. So that can be really useful if you get the push and roam like that. And if you're on the other side, let's say you're Qiyana on blue side, you don't have as good of options, but there are a couple. So you can come over here, you know, make sure that that's cleared out, walk over here, jump this wall right here. Let's say the jungler's out of the picture. Jump this wall right here, and then come down, and then just blast plant over, and then get them like that, right? If they're pushed up to like right here or something, you can come over with that blast plant. Now it is a bit harder. You're not going to get as good of a flank because, you know, this tower's here. So you're not, like, you can't, I don't know for sure. I don't think you can jump this wall right here. I think that's too far. Like, you could come up and maybe jump like this wall and take like 1, maybe 2 tower shots if they're really low. You know, maybe you can do that. I think that's going to be a bit riskier. But the problem is, it doesn't work as well because, you know, a lot of times that's a very common ward spot because junglers gank from that same way often, is the like blast plant over. So, you know, a lot of times this ward will catch you if you go that way. This ward right here, well, you would avoid this one actually if you come through there. But if they have it warded over here, I don't know. It's worth a try. It's better than just running down the river. So like using the own allies blast plan against them can be pretty useful. So it just allows you to get around, wall hopping, get some stuff. Now you can jump over stuff too. So if you're running away, you know, and oops, I don't know what I just did there. Okay, we'll just reset that. But you can wall hop like over this wall. You can attack the golems and jump that wall. You can jump over raptors to jump over that wall with your E. So there are some situations like that. I mean, one of the more common ones is the Gromp one. So if you're right here with the Gromp, you can use Gromp to jump over that wall if you're caught out, you know, in the jungle and trying to escape. That can be kind of useful. Other couple of things is the E, Q, W. Q is kind of your standard guaranteed hit combo because remember, when you E, you can Q. It's going to automatically hit them whenever you connect. Then you W, you jump. You can gap close a little bit more if they flash away. You can just kind of reposition. That's going to reset the cooldown on your Q, and then you're going to grab the terrain and get that execute hit off of them. So ideally, especially if you're roaming, you're going to want to E and then get your river. You want to walk up with the river empowered Q, and then you E, Q, get that root on them, W, and then Q again, or, you know, ult them into a wall and Q again after you get that. But just that's guaranteed you're going to hit them. But based on one of the videos I saw, It's actually faster if you're, and you only want to do this coming out of a brush, like if they're face checking you into a brush. Just because the E is the guaranteed combo, so you want it guaranteed if it's open field. But if they don't see you, if you're super confident you're going to hit your E, there's no way you're going to miss it because they're walking straight at you in a brush. You can Q first, and then E, and then WQ again. Now, the reason for doing that is you don't have to worry about the animation on the Q as well there. So it's going to hit them at the same time that the E hits them. Because what happens is, like, the E will finish, and then the Q hits them. So it's a slightly longer delay on it. So that's just going to, like, one-shot pop them even faster, like maybe 1/10 of a second, 2/10 of a second faster if you do that. So the Q, E, W, Q can work if you're coming out of a bush. But if you're not sure, if you just want to guarantee that you hit it, just go ahead, E, Q, W, Q, and that's going to be your best one. You can R before the combo. That's something that somebody said is... He likes, if you get that good hit on him, then he thinks that you should R first so that you already have that animation completed, and then go for the combo when they're stunned against the wall. So you can do the EQ, EQ, R, and then WQ if you want to when you're gap closing on them. You might have to do that to get the animation correct. I think that might be the right thing to do if they have flash, because they can just flash your R to dodge it. But if you EQ onto them with that root, then they're going to be rooted for half a second, and they can't dodge the R while they're rooted. So I think that's the best combo, as long as they're going to be close to a wall so that they can't flash it. Once again, I'm not a Qiyana expert, but it just depends on if they have flash or a dash. But if you can get them with the R first, obviously that's going to be ideal, because it's just going to be a lot faster, and they're not going to be able to dodge any of your stuff if they're R'd into a wall. So it just depends if they have flash or not. And then, as I mentioned earlier, remember that you can flash during the animation of the R, so that is also going to allow you to sort of reposition like a vein to make sure you're going to hit them into the wall. Just remember, if they're walking close to a wall anyways, it's probably going to hit them. Even if you don't hit them with the projectile, the stun's still going to hit them. And I'm like 90% sure it still does the damage when it goes around, right? Knocks back enemies, blah, blah, blah. Creates a shockwave, passes through, deals the terrain. Okay, yeah. So the R, like the knockback, stops upon hitting terrain, creates erupting shockwave across river brush that passes through. Yeah, it'll still do some damage even if you don't, even if it goes across the wall. So that's fine. And then you can, yeah, like I said earlier, use the W to trade with the grass in the laning phase, or just kind of the tips and tricks. Okay, well, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Once again, I'm not an expert, but I try to give you as much information as I possibly could. If you'd like to sponsor a guide yourself, just email me at thestratchprofessor@gmail.com. You know, once again, not an expert on Qiyana, as I keep saying. Nagarake knows this. He just wanted my take on it. But I do have lots of guides, especially on champions that are in my wheelhouse, supports that I have played a lot. So I'm happy to do those. But if you want to see me try to tackle, you know, whatever your favorite champion is, I will do the research. You know, I will try to give you the best information that I possibly can give you. So just keep that in mind. But anyways, that's going to be it. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.